Okay, just stay as we are. People can hear us. We will be
Mhm.
right there, people. So excited to go live once again. Awesome.
All
Here
right.
we are, and we are live.
All right. So I'm popping on.
Yep, let's hop on.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Now I got to figure out how to see you again. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
me. Hello, everybody. I am so happy that we get to be live once again with Stephanie and GDC. We've got lots of wonderful things to talk about.
We
There,
do. I'm excited.
there we are as we figure out. So let's see here. I'm just going to put something in the chat. Welcome. Awesome. So we do have one person here sending us hearts and everything. So that's really cool. It says we have two watching now. So that's really cool. And so, yeah, people go ahead and drop us a little line if you want us to know, just say hello and or let us know where you're coming from and we can see the chat and you guys can converse with us and we can have fun conversations if you want to do anything in the chat. Like if you have a question for either of us or both of us, please feel free to ask. I am watching the chat. Nevertheless, I'm going to quickly introduce myself and then I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie to introduce herself. Hopefully, we'll be doing this enough where you guys are going to be like, I know who you are. So awesome. Hello, everybody. I am Granddaughter Crow, www.granddaughtercrow.com. I am most widely known as a shaman, as an author, and also the host of Belief, Being, and Beyond podcast, where I got to run into Stephanie, and I found out that we have so much like mindedness. So, Stephanie, let us know you and your primalhearthealing.com.
Yes. So I'm Stefani Michelle. I'm also an author, and I my website is primalhearthealing.com, and all of my social medias are Primal Heart Healing. You can find me there. You can find my services there. I'm a shadow work coach as well as Granddaughter Crow is, and that's where we started finding common ground. Um, which we're gonna, yeah, see both of our books totally aligned, and we're gonna start our conversations there, but go into so much magical elements and other modalities of healing. And we have a great topic that we're gonna start off with today that we left off with from last week. Do you want to recap what you had said and how we left off last week?
Absolutely, I do. I just also wanted to shout out, we've got some more people joining us now. Hey, Joelle, girl, love you like a sis. Joelle follows, I believe, both of us and has watched the podcast that we did together. So it's nice to have you here. Also, Mira she's well aware of who you are. She was here last time. So I'm just excited to keep kicking this off. So once again, people, we are going to do organic conversation. If you want to comment, we can see the chat. We are on about a 30-45 second delay, so we're not ignoring you. We will come up as soon as we can. So yeah, this is a really organic conversation. Um, we last time, we got into a really great conversation. You can watch that recording at Granddaughter Crow YouTube live. But it ended where I was like, I sometimes am ashamed of my pain. And
Right.
when I say that, this is kind of what I mean, because that could mean a lot of things. Um, and then I'll speculate. What I mean by that is I don't have the best relationship with somebody who is biologically very significant to me. And I'll just leave it at that so I don't hurt anybody's feelings as this goes out. And every once in a while, I will have a little Granddaughter Crow meltdown because I get triggered by this individual. Inevitably, I ended out just distancing myself. But it came up one night, this person, and I was talking about them with my husband, and my husband was like, not again. And all of a sudden, I was like, I felt like a little girl, and I felt like I'm in trouble for the pain. I'm in trouble for all of the emotions that this significant individual brought up. And I just looked at my husband because I can play little girl with him. And I just said, am I in trouble for bringing this up again? And he looked at me, he's like, you are not in trouble at all. It's the other person that's in trouble in my book. So he became my protector. But I thought it was really unique that it's almost like, and that's just one little idea of being ashamed of your pain, this thing that keeps coming up and then people are like tired of hearing about, or whatever. And so some of that for me is this whole idea, yay, we have another watcher. Feel free to drop into the comments a hello to everybody, as well as you can let us know where you're from. So part of it makes me wonder, maybe it's because I'm a Gen X female. Maybe it's because I am the daughter of a reverend. I mean, my father was the pastor of the church, and you don't air your dirty laundry. You walk like this, you talk like this, you always smile, etc. And so some of it comes from that, but then there's another aspect that comes from, well, I'm a healer. How bad would
Right,
that look like if I'm sick? You know?
right,
And it's like, I don't like that idea because sometimes the way that I know how to handle people who are going through trials and tribulations is because I go through trials and tribulations.
right. That's
So,
right.
and then there's another aspect about me that's like, I'm a very highly sensitive person, very an empath. And so if I tell you a sad story about myself, I start feeling your sadness too. And I'm just like, oh, just so that's a lot right there, Stephanie. And I can
Yeah.
see that you're taking notes, and I'm really glad.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
love,
have so sorry.
go ahead.
There's so much to comment on about that. Of course, everyone has their experiences, right? And their upbringing and their cultural experiences that create shame, especially when it comes to shame of trauma. But the things that we and safe spaces, right? Those are kind of the common themes that we hear about every day. But the things that we don't hear about, that I think you and I do a really good job at getting to and addressing, are things like the transference of energy. And so in the beginning of your story, when your husband or your significant other, I think you said your husband, I'm so
My
sorry.
husband.
Okay. Yeah, was like, oh God, please don't let us talk about it again, is because he's connected to you. There is a transfer of energy that the two of you share constantly, and he couldn't hold space for you. And in that moment, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that he can't hold space in other times, but in that moment, he couldn't. And you guys had great communication. And we have to understand that when we're close to people or have significant others, husbands, wives, partnerships, they feel what we feel.
Yeah.
We've created a contract, a bond in that space. And sometimes we can hold space for each other, and sometimes we just don't have the capacity. And that is okay. I feel like a lot of times we don't allow each other to not have capacity. Do you know what I mean?
Love that.
But you allowed him to not have capacity. You asked a question. He reassured you that's not what's happening, and it was a beautiful communication. And you didn't get stuck in the back and forth of misunderstanding and the back and forth of an energy system that then becomes what I call poisoned or corroded because the allowance for space just isn't in the moment. And you wait until it is in the moment. And I love that. Now, I do have tools, and there's so much I want to get to. So if you need, if somebody's asking a question or an I need to stop talking, just raise your hand, let me know.
I
But
will.
okay, in the space where you need to express yourself and get these emotions out, and you're finding that it's too overwhelming for your support system at the moment, because it's not always, right? It's just at the moment it's too overwhelming for your support system. There's something that I learned in the early 90s, and I'm sure it's all over the place now, but it's called peer, primal emotional energy release. And I don't think it's talked about enough. And what that is taking the energy that is stuck in your body, whether it's shame, trauma, anger, anything that's stuck, and doing a physical movement, a primal energy emotional release. And this is that concept of hitting the pillow or going for a walk. You know, my husband doesn't understand that my form of primal emotional energy release is listening to hard music. I can't listen to the hard music around other people or even around him because it doesn't have the same effect. But when I go for a walk or I go for a drive and I need to release that energy from my body, that's one way that I do it. I talk a lot about panic attacks being you're triggered in the body, and the body is saying, let this out of me. And so, because you've kept it inside for so long, it comes out in force. And when
Yes.
you're in a safe space, it's time to just see that panic attack through so it can get out of your body
I
instead
love
of,
that. I love that because one of the tools that I work with is a complementary tool to what you're saying. And the way that I explain it is that all is energy. Energy
Mhm.
seeks its freedom, whatever it is, even if it's anger, even if it's shame, it's seeking its
Right, right.
freedom. And in
Yes.
well, yeah, it's seeking its freedom, it's seeking its next level of expression. But when we block that energy, we end up, imploding, exploding, having a meltdown, a panic attack, etc. But the way that you can release energy is through movement. And sometimes that movement is laughing, sometimes it's crying, sometimes it's like you said, punching a pillow or going for a drive and listening to AC/DC or whatever you listen to. I don't know what you listen to. But yeah, so I'm complimenting. Yes, primal energy, emotional release. I put it in the chat. Love to hear your thoughts, you guys. We're still here. I'm still watching the chat. Feel free to make any comments if you aren't like cooking dinner. So,
Right, right. And I do want to address, and that's exactly right. That was a beautiful sum up. I love how you stated that release part. But I want to address the aspects of being a healer and being ashamed of your pain as a healer. And I have a couple of different scenarios or stories or whatever that I think illustrate that. One is when I was young, early 20s, maybe 20, I went to the Sanctuary of Peace and Harmony on Long Island. And I made great friends at the time. And our mentor had a human side. And I remember one of the ladies in the class had witnessed our mentor's human side and was very upset by it and was very like, how can she have, she didn't use these words, how can she have opinions? But it pretty much was, how can she treat a human being like that? How can she have an opinion? How can she be emotional? And it was very off putting. And I remember, I didn't verbalize it at the time, and maybe I just internalized it. But I remember thinking, because she's human, but I didn't, there was no conversation. But it was interesting because people do have that belief that, well, if they're a mentor or a guru or a healer, they are in this space of om or,
right.
constant meditation. And that was so hard for me internally to embrace or even then step into the role of being a healer because I am a very emotional, bull in the china shop, Tasmanian devil. I got all of them. My energy just swirls and swirls and swirls. And so, how could I, in the past, now I love it, embrace and accept me. But in the past, it was like, how can I claim to be a healer when I have all these unhealed things, right?
Sure.
And
Yep.
to, yeah, and to go then to piggyback on what you said, I had a conversation with my husband once, and
Sorry
it
about that.
was a conversation of conflict, and we weren't in a good space at the moment. And he had said, well, the kind of the same thing that that woman said, how can you be a healer when you're so emotional? And now this is 30 years later from that
Right.
initial moment. And I said, because I know what they're going through, and
Yes.
because I can be a human, and because I have had those experiences, and I have overcome those experiences, but I'm still human, and I'm still going to have my big emotions. And I love my big emotions. And so now we've gotten to the point where when I'm cooking dinner and frustrated for whatever reason, because I can be dramatic sometimes, in the beginning, he would say, stop yelling. And I was yelling at the pots and pans. And I said, this doesn't concern you. And he said, okay, because I wasn't yelling at him. I was yelling at my dinner frustration, right? So it's such a huge difference that a lot of us struggle with, but we don't talk about that struggle of just being openly emotional and a healer.
That's exactly right. And so this is where we get to kind of say, yes, I am a human and I do have opinions. And here's my theory. Here's another theory that I have. So, I was raised by the pastor of the church, the Reverend. I'm the youngest daughter. He's full blood Navajo. I'm up on stage at age 4 singing Jesus Loves Me in Navajo. I know how to sit. I know how not to swing my ponytail. I know how to put my ankles together. I know how to smile. I know all of those things, right? This is back in the 70s. Also, if you look at Hollywood. Now I know this is a big jump, but I'll tie it in. If you look at Hollywood, we used to have these untouchable stars. This is pre-social media, pre-trending online, pre-influencer. We used to have these icons and they could do no wrong. But oh my goodness, if one of them shows up drunk, then oh, they're in the tabloids and they're ruined and all of that because they did a human error.
Right.
Not to defend or anything, but now in social media with all of these things, you can be a rock star and come from the middle of what you think is nowhere because you know how to cook and you are up there and we are watching you. You know how to put makeup on. We are watching you. You know how to what entertain us. We are watching you. People with 2 million viewers that would have never has never made it to Hollywood. So I think what I'm trying to say is the time of being untouchable
Mm-hmm.
is over. The
Mm-hmm.
time of being open, real, I'm a human being, that is actually more healing to people than if I were to hide that I have big emotions, that I sometimes melt down, that I'm in pain. So I think that there's a little bit of a conscious change due to even just the influences that we have, what I'm saying, social media and online. What do you think
Right.
about that?
Just I love that. And I completely agree with you. I definitely think the times are changing and people are looking for realness and looking for authenticity. But I think also in that same arena, that there are a lot of people that are almost like peeking out of the corner, out of the curtain. Like, are you sure? Is it safe out there? Can I really be myself?
Yep.
And here we are saying, absolutely, we're like giving permission for that. Yes, this is the new energy. Yes, this is all we want is to see real people. Go ahead.
I love it. So we actually have some engagement here, Stephanie. Thank you, Joelle. I see it. And Joelle says, coincidentally, I picked up Cindy Dale's Empathy today. She writes about how those experiences, i.e., being human, are what enables us to even generate empathy for others in the first place. So, with that being said, it's kind of
Mhm.
like maybe empaths are, oh, I don't know, even more emotional than the average bear, you know?
Absolutely. I love that. And that's such a great way, a great connection. It's hard though sometimes, again, going back to being ashamed of your pain, it's hard sometimes just to allow it, you know. At least it has been in the past for me. Not anymore, but in the past it was so hard for me just to allow my pain, allow it to even surface. Everything was just stuffed down until I would have those explosions or those mental breakdowns, and it would be, I used to describe myself as having a very long fuse, and it would burn for months and it would burn for years, but the bomb on the side at the end of that fuse was just as big as exactly as the fuse. So I was one of those people that I just didn't know how to feel my feelings, find my feelings, express my feelings. It was all shame. It was all
Yeah,
shame.
shame. You
Yeah.
know, and I also wanted to just compliment that by saying sometimes it is like because of we weren't like raised to be able to do that. Sometimes it's the external environment, but sometimes it goes back to your comment earlier about going up and this one lady, because you had mentors, and this one lady was like, oh my God, she's being a human being. It's that kind of negativity that sometimes will hit a healer, and we take it like, okay, I'm not a human to this person. I am a healer and I have to be as such. I think that we're starting to shift, but that, I mean, come on, sometimes you got to blame the other person too for their, you know. I remember this one time this lady um was like, "Oh, you're not feeling well?" And I said, "No, you know, my back hurts." And she's like, "Oh, what a relief. It's so good to finally see that you're human too. Granddaughter Crow has pain." And she went off like, and then now she's like my friend. And I'm like, I don't necessarily know if I want to be friends with you if you're excited about my pain. You know what I mean?
Right. And I feel like that was maybe a poor expression for her, but in a way, she was relating like, oh God, thank God you're not untouchable. You're not up there in the stars. You are just like me. So again, it might not have been the best way for her to express that, but in that moment, I can feel that she was just trying to relate to you and be like, oh gosh, it's okay. I don't have, if I ever become great like you, I can feel my pain.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So we also have Joelle now saying that's also the kind of mentality that cultivates cult leaders. And I'm assuming, Joelle, that you're talking about the kind of mentality where the leader never feels pain and is not human. And you can
I,
correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost it is. I definitely agree with that. That's it leads me to people who are so spiritually minded that they're no earthly good, and or people
mhm.
who refuse, because it's almost like we're doing a paradigm shift in my age group. You know, I'm what, 55 this year. And the paradigm shift is be more accessible, be more vulnerable, be more gentle, for this is stronger. This is stronger. And that way you weren't, yeah, let me see. It says, yeah, where folks expect the leader to be perfect. Yep. So we were right.
Perfect.
Thank you, Joelle. And the thing is I I think that being imperfect, there's a thing in in the Asian culture called wabi sabi, and it's where the imperfections make it perfect. And
Hmm.
I
Oh yeah, I love that.
absolutely, yeah, and I absolutely agree with that. But I think that this paradigm shift of coming on live to say, hey, we're two internationally recognized authors and we feel ashamed sometimes because we have pain because we're healers. So let's talk about this. And if we can talk about this, then you, no matter if you're listening now and alive or watch this in the future, you get to feel your pain. It makes you stronger.
Yeah, it really does. It's a beautiful thing. And um, being a healer and a psychic and an intuitive and an empath, there's more to it. So I want to go back to the being ashamed part because there's so much to dissect. It's not just the external voices, right? That's a huge part of it, a huge part of perception. But when you're an empath and you're an intuitive, you know the source of your pain and you
Right.
know the source of the pain of the person who inflicted that pain. And so you are torn between compassion for the person and then the compassion for yourself, because it's almost like you can see the pathway, the
Yeah.
past lives, the everything that happened before, everything that's going to happen since. And it is an overwhelming internal struggle that you have to really sit with and dissect and get again, give yourself permission to be somebody. Here's the thing, people are always like, you need to take accountability, and I myself too. You need to take accountability, you need to take accountability. Where did you create your life, right? But you are allowed to acknowledge that you were once a victim, and that's where I think as healers we forget
Yeah.
it's okay that, yes, I was a victim to you, and I'm going to allow that emotion to leave my body. I'm going to process the fact that even though I understand that your pain came from your trauma and you're just then turning it onto me, I allowed you to turn it on to me. See, and this is where, right? And I understand that. And I took on the role for that. Right. And so there's that loop that we get stuck in as empaths, intuitives, and healers. And we have to remind each other it's okay that you were the victim. And you need to feel that, because if you don't allow your body to feel that, it will fester and it will grow inside of you. But don't feel it forever. Feel it, process it, get angry, get emotional, and then let it go, and then say I forgive you, and then I forgive myself for putting myself in that situation and thinking I could do the impossible, because we can do great things but we can't do everything.
I love that. This kind of also brings me back to another topic that both you and I have in common. Check out Stephanie Michelle's book, Chakra and Shadow Work, published by Llewellyn Worldwide, and my new book coming up, Shamanism and the Shadow by Granddaughter Crow, also Llewellyn. So that is a very good point around, as a healer who does a lot of self work, we also then look at people who are way out of line and understand why they're way out of line. But here's the whole thing that I do. I try not to take, and this is a hard one for me, I try not to take on the responsibility for other people's shit,
Mm-hmm.
period. Meaning, I don't want them to take responsibility for mine,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want it. So it's this balance, because a lot of times healers, sensitives, empaths will go, "Oh, that must have been my fault. What could I have done to change that?" And so there's an imbalance there. And
Mm-hmm.
so, it's kind of like, oh, well, I was abused as a child by this person, but I also know their story and they were abused as a child as that person. And so there's a two-prong effect here.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be okay with, yeah, that happened to me, and I'm going to move through that healing energy. And it is up to them to do their healing and processing as well. There's this thing about responsibility and I know that empaths and intuitives are really responsible, but I also think that part of that is going to come out with shadow work. Like,
Right.
my shadow is sick and tired of taking the blame for the demise of Rome, you know?
Right, right. Absolutely, absolutely. And that's where I think it's really important for all of us to recognize we don't have to, one, not everything is love and light. And two, you don't have to take everyone under your wing. And three, there's boundaries. I lost you. Okay, you're back. And three, there's boundaries. You set up a space where you invite people in professionally, not personally anymore. Your personal space is reserved for the people who ebb and flow with you, who can have space for you, who can hold space for you, and you can then, and it's truly a partnership. And that was a hard, long lesson for me to learn where the people that I am helping, I can't have them as my friends. I love them just like I love my friends, just like I love my family. But it becomes there's a lot that it becomes, to be honest with you. And you have to just be able to, when you're that sensitive and you're that when there's that much energy transference, you have to put those lines up, and that person isn't in your immediate circle. They have to be placed in that circle. And I know that's going to be really hard for a lot of healers and psychics and intuitives to, because we're getting into your heart. As a client, I see your heart. I truly do love who you are. I love your being. I love your soul. But there are things that need to be separate from me, just like any other profession, just like a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, any other profession. There's your professional life and your personal life. I think for us, though, initially, it's so much harder to create those boundaries because what we're doing is seeing beyond boundaries.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think that boundaries is a really good one. So we're kind of talking about shame, the guilt of the healer, the guilt of the empath, the incredible paradigm shift of understanding that being accessible and more relatable actually is the most um powerful thing that you can do, but there is also that professionalism and everything else. So I am looking, we still have just a few people hanging in there. I am loving you guys. Thank you for hanging out, even if you're cooking dinner or taking a walk or whatever you're doing. We'll probably be chatting for another 15 minutes. Feel free to just drop a word in the chat of a topic that you want Stephanie and I to explore, because these are really, what would you call it, improvisational conversations that we
Yeah,
have, and that we're going to continue to do this a handful of times and see what happens. So anyway, back to yeah, boundaries. I
yeah,
agree with boundaries. I kind of see my boundaries as a healer is when I am in a one-on-one session with somebody. That's theirs, not
right.
mine. And to the extent that even if somebody says, "How did it go?" I'm like, you can ask them. Not no disclosure here, you know, or if they're like, "Hey, did you read such and such, my sister?" It's like, why don't you ask them? I'm not even going to tell you who my clients are, you know? And I always think of it as that is yours.
Hmm.
And then when I go into a session, I'm like, this is mine.
Right.
This is mine. This is mine. But then when I get to know people outside, such as some of these lovely people in the chat that are listening right now, um, you know, I know them on a more like relatable peer level and friend, you know, sister level. And it's just one of those things where I then feel comfortable to kind of show up and let them know a little bit more about, hey, this is what's going on behind the scenes. But
Hmm.
there's like but then if I'm reading them, that's strictly their time. You know, so there is this boundary thing that I have, and that's how I do that boundary work.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so I didn't mean to make it sound like it was black and white and linear like that, because there are absolutely former clients of mine who have jumped into the friend zone. But it's when we have then established that connection where it is we're giving and taking, we're going back and forth. There's always that exchange of energy. That's the thing that I think is most important. But that also comes when you establish a practice. But in the beginning, in our teens, in our 20s, and our 30s, being this sensitive, we tend, well, at least I did, and the people that I have talked to tend to, want to take care of everybody and forget that we're then taking on all of their pain, right? And so it's never going to be black and white, but you always have to find yourself in the middle of that swirl of energy. Um,
Absolutely. I agree. And I don't think that you made it sound like black and white. I don't think
okay,
anybody
good.
took it like that. I kind of am distracted because I'm typing in the chat. And so, but I absolutely agree that it is. I have people who will text me and they'll text me pictures of like a deer or something that makes me happy, or
Yes,
an eagle or a fox. And because as a healer, even on my days off, if you text me a picture of like something horrific, I am, like Stephanie said, I'm connected to you now. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh, and I take on that. So then in that, it's my responsibility to step away from the phone when I am full,
right.
recognizing that there is this constant. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about the energetic exchange, whether it is a positive or negative one, this interconnectedness, kind of to bring us back to what you had said about me and my husband being when you're in a close relationship, you both are impacted. There's a bond, and then there's bonds that are a little bit more like this, but the
Mhm.
bonds nonetheless and the interconnectivity of people. I know I just boom skipped into another one, but
No, that's perfect. And I love that. And maybe you can actually help me with this because I have this one is hard for me to identify or define, put into words, because I can visually see energy between people. And
yeah,
so when I first watched the documentary Fantastic Fun Guy, and
yeah,
it's about mushrooms, not necessarily psychedelics. I mean, that is a little part in it, but just mushrooms in general and what they do for our planet and what they do for our bodies. And there's a network of communication called mycelium, and it's the same as the tree's communication under the ground. And a tree can, this is so incredible, a tree can give a seed, into the wind, and it can travel 5,000 miles, plant itself, start to grow, and that mama tree can find that seed and communicate with it underground and through the earth. And so I see that in real life when I'm talking to people. I can see the energy moving. And so there are, just like there's trunks, there's bigger branches, there's smaller branches, there's twigs, there's berries, there's all these different layers of energy. And it is not flat, it's not two-dimensional, it's not even three-dimensional. It is truly 11 dimensional. This is that quantum physics stuff that I am studying so much because of the way that I actually, see the world. Um, and so some chords are intertwined beyond the life you're experiencing right now. And we call that soulmates or just connections. There's a lot of other new words for those kind of connections, but essentially soulmates. And there are some even soulmate bonds that are stronger than others. There's different sizes, different frequencies, different bonds. And then there are those outer layers of people who just have messages for you, just have experiences for you. But it's all, that flower of life kind of imagery, but it's so much more complicated than that just 2D image that we see. It's, 11 dimensions. There's chords within chords within chords within chords going in all different directions. It's such a beautiful thing. But it has been difficult for me to truly define and put out there, because it's so visual and there's
Yeah.
a lack of English words for it.
There is. I think we have a comment here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Joelle must have told me about this documentary. What's the name of the documentary again? And I'm gonna have to check it out.
Fantastic fungi.
Oh, you
Yeah.
know what? Okay, you want me to be real with you guys? I thought that she was saying a fantastic, fun guy.
Oh, or fungi. So it depends on,
So
your,
I was
yeah.
like, what is this? Like a new superhero guy? Like
Oh,
I was
no.
like totally, I love it. I love it. I love it.
Fungus,
Fungus.
fungi,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fun guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fungi.
That
The
was
professional.
Yeah, that was me just multitasking and losing my brain a little bit, which is really kind of funny. There's also a comment in here that says it's something wild like 80% to 90% of folks who dose psychedelic or well, I don't know how to, anyway, that they have a profound spiritual experiment of experience of some sort, the psychedelics. And
So
go ahead.
So I have never, oh my God. I love that they said that because I didn't do any drugs. I didn't do any mushrooms until I was 46. I saw all of this before and I don't even know if I can talk about this. But I won't tell you how much I did, but it was a very small dose of psychedelic mushrooms at the age of 46. And what it did for me was it just aligned. It made me realize like, oh my God, this is exactly how my brain functions, and forgive me, but it's like this is why everyone else does drugs so they can understand my brain because this is how my brain operates all the time.
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely love that. I mean, my Aunt Alice, she was a high priestess of the peyote way. So that stuff really does run in my DNA and everything like this. Also, yeah, 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 yeah. So we got another comment in here. Um Mira, my butterfly priestess, says thank you both for this beautiful wisdom. Drop some hearts and butterflies and some dynamic stars in there. And then
Thank you,
Joelle,
Mira.
yeah, she's a sweetheart. And then also Joelle says that she's convinced that fungi is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. And I agree with you too, Stephanie, that like my son was, we'll just call him, there was a time he went through his 420 state, you know.
Yeah,
I'll just put it
yeah.
I'll just put it like that. And he's like, I don't, he goes, Mom, you literally are like on a high level all the time. You're always looking at noticing all of the nuances and noticing all of the patterns. And he's like, I don't want to see you high. So one time I decided to try it, probably at the age of 46. And I'm just kidding, I don't know. But and I tried it and I don't get the same effect as everybody else. I go so deep that I mean just a little bit and I'm like, let me journal about the universe, you know?
Yeah,
I don't want any noise. I just want to be in a room by myself with all of that kind of stuff. So I kind of behave as though I'm on something as well, but that's just the way that my mind is set up. So kind of back
yeah,
to that whole thing about it's about waking a part of ourselves up that has fallen asleep because it was for whatever reason, which is a whole nother podcast or another live. And
right.
then when we do wake up to that, I do see what I do is I see almost like what I would say is snow, like in the old-fashioned TV shows. And then sometimes they spark, and then sometimes I'll see lines between them. And I'll know,
Hmm.
oh, wow, there's something. Sometimes I just emotionally sense it. But yeah, I mean, I think that understanding the greater part of ourself is understanding the interconnectedness of our way that we are, and then it kind of leads us to understanding how we see the world. So to kind of answer your question, the big question of how would I explain it? It feels like for me, if you've ever watched one of those TV shows that show the brain and then you get these little neural pathways and you get all the synopsis going on and then it goes and it's all and the next thing you do is you look up into the universe and you see the cosmos going like this. I just go back to know thyself and you know the universe. And for me, it's a lot more meaningful for me to understand the interconnectedness because of the work that I do. If I
Hmm.
was, flipping burgers, I might not need to understand that. Well, knowing me, I'd want to. I'd
Right,
understand
right, right.
the dynamic between the burger, the fry, and the Coke. I would understand that, right? Right, right.
And the person that's going to receive it and the digestive system that's going to receive, I mean, there's so much, everything, and we can
Everything.
do it as small as that, but everything is connected. And I love that your visual of the neurons pathways and the firing of those. But let's take it a step further, focus it in a little bit, and then you see that there's neurons that aren't on that microscope. There's more energy in between each of those neurons. There's more energy that we can't see. And that's where I wish everyone would kind of lean into for themselves. And it's going to look different for everyone. I have a client who she sees colors, and that's how she understands the energy, and that's how she lives in her flow. There is another person, another client of mine, who literally just lives from her heart. And it's not a bleeding heart type of thing, but her heart leads her. I need to call my friend and see if she is okay. And lo and behold, her friend is having a really bad day. So she allows that heart chakra to pull her. And it's just like having different eye color, different hair color, different skin color. We have different superpowers. We might all be organic beings in this avatar, and underneath, we're all of spirit and light beings. But in that organic avatar, some things are expressed more greatly than other things. For
Yeah.
me, I always say my greatest vision is when my eyes are closed. I can see so much more when my eyes are closed than I can when my eyes are open. And everyone just needs to find, we all have a superpower. Every single person on this planet. Now, some of us have more poison in the body, mind, and spirit. And that's where again, the shadow work comes in. You got to dispel and get rid of that poison, however it's gotten there, whatever it is. But once you can heal that poison and get that out of your body, you have a superpower. You have something great about you.
Yep. If you want to do that work, pick up chakras and I'm like, pick up chakras and shadow work by Stefani Michelle, as well as shamanism and the shadow. In looking at both of these books, I think that Stephanie said it really nicely last time, which is this where I leave off, she picks up. Where she leaves off, I pick up. There's a good like-mindedness about all is energy and our interconnectedness. And, the beauty around it is to be able to, like you said, we each have different superpowers. We each learn things differently. And maybe that's what our next Saturday at 4 o'clock. Let's talk about superpowers. What do you think,
I
Stephanie?
think that's beautiful. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so, but the beauty is whether you realize it or not, there is an interconnectivity among all of us. And I think that it is that interconnectivity that helps us to understand if somebody is being authentic or not. And it is that where we're like that person feels fake, that person feels like a cult leader, feels
Right.
untouchable, feels like they do no wrong. And it's kind of like that's a part of our superpower too, is our connection and facing ourself and our own shadow. Really, for me, my experience is becoming comfortable with aspects of my shadow.
Hmm.
understanding where they came from, recognizing that I have shadow, all of those things, and then finally integrating it and realize that my shadow a lot of times was that aspect of me that stood up and tried to protect me when nobody else would, you know? It really is. And then being able to get that back and give my shadow a hug for everything that she has done. And when I do that, I feel more comfortable with my shadow, then I feel more comfortable in the interconnected web with everybody else's shadow too.
Right, right. And I love that you said that because within the shadow are superpowers. And it's the shadow only hurts us when it's filled with poison and toxins and we ignore it. When we misplace our shadow superpowers and basically use it for evil instead of good, that is how it becomes toxic and poison. And when we reclaim our shadow, it becomes a superpower.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So remember, people, do the shadow work so that you can become the fantastic fun guy. No, I just
Yeah. I mean, so you can be the best version of you
absolutely.
unapologetically. It's amazing.
Yes, and it gives comfort to those people like, being around somebody who does their own shadow work. It makes me feel comfortable just being like, here I am, Stephanie, this is me. And there's more of a rapport because I'm not thinking, oh, well, she's going to judge me because she hasn't done her shadow work or anything like that. So we're
Right.
about ready to kind of wrap up, but I wanted to look once again. Very well said, both of you. Thank you both for the wonderful conversation. You guys, love you. And, we want to just check out. I mean, this is the second time we've ever gone live, like me, ever, ever. And so we're just still kind of getting used to all of the bells and whistles and all of that. But I really appreciate it. I think that Stephanie, are we going to do this again next Saturday at 4 p.m. talking about superpowers?
Absolutely.
4
Absolutely.
4 p.m. Mountain Time. Invite your friends, and this is
Please.
recorded. So if you missed a little bit, then it'll be live. It'll be up on the underneath the live button. So is there anything else? Thank you so much, Butterfly Priestess. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we close?
No, I think we had a wonderful conversation today. I love having these conversations. I always learn as I'm talking.
I know. I learn as I'm talking and listening, and I'm not only learning about the depths of our interconnectivity and fungus, but I'm also learning how to look at how many live people we have and read the chat. So I'm all,
I know, and I wish I could have joined you on that today. Hopefully next week the YouTube on my iPad will work, but I
yeah,
don't know why it didn't today.
yeah. Give us an extra viewer. No.
Yeah.
Awesome, you guys. Well, thank you so much for once again tuning into our live. If you want, I know you guys can get a hold of us. You can also leave comments. If you have a topic that you're just like, I really want Stephanie and Granddaughter Crow to kind of explore this topic, tell us. We're really just, like I said, improvisational, you know, extemporaneous. I don't know what the other words are on the
All
spot.
things magical, shadow, and light.
All things magical, shadow, and light. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Stephanie. Everybody, have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful rest of your week. We will see you next time on the Flippity Flip.